What's going on, GP Gaming? This is Ghetto Prophecy with more Total War Attila. Now, this is not a real multiplayer battle. This is me showing you guys some moves with my friend jwilly. Jwilly is commanding the Eastern Roman Empire. He's doing exactly what I'm telling him to, so I can show you guys some basic moves. So, I bring the Alans versus the Eastern Roman Empire. You're very likely to fight both of these factions. These are the two best factions in the game, for sure. So, if you're trying to win, these two factions are some good starting factions to play as. And you're likely to face them. So, we both brought pretty standard builds. I brought 3 Sarmatian Cataphracts, 2 Elite Sarmatian Cataphracts, and an Alani General Commander. Then I put 2 Elite Agathyrsi Warriors on each flanks. I put 3 Sarmatian Warband in the middle, and then 2 Agathyrsi Warriors behind them to protect my Germanic Hurlers. And then I brought 4 Germanic Hurlers in the center. Now, he brought 1 Palatina and 3 Protectores Domestici, 2 Fundatores, and then 5 Clibanarii. So, and then 4 Hetarea Guards, 2 on each flank to support the cavalry fight. So basically, what you want to do, well, there's many different ways to play. However, the way that works best for me is a semi-rush like this. Yeah, I have missile units, but it's still pretty much a rush build, because these slingers, they run out of ammo very quickly. They do their damage and then they run out of ammo very fast. So they're not something I need to keep in the back of my lines for a long time. So here, I'm going to show you how weaker cavalry, so these Sarmatian Cataphracts are nowhere near as strong as these Clibanarii. So this is what happens if you blob your cavalry, or any units in general. If you blob your units, this is what will happen. What can happen. So I stop all 3 of these awesome shock cav with my much weaker shock cav unit, and I'm going to swing around with my other 2 units and support with my infantry. This is why you put your elite shock infantry on the flanks, so that way they can support the cavalry fights. Now, as you can see, you need to do it quickly. Your infantry support needs to be close behind, because you see how fast my Sarmatian Cataphracts broke, and it allows me free units to charge into his Axemen. Now, his Axemen did a pretty good number against these Sarmatian Cataphracts with their throwing axes. Especially here, as they don't pull out properly, they kind of stop, and then they just get shot up some more. So there we go, I pulled them out. So this is what will happen if you blob your cav like this, or even your infantry. If you blob your infantry, blob your cavalry, you can get surrounded, and even weaker units supported with infantry, weaker cav units, like my Sarmatian Cataphracts, can beat Clibanarii when they have infantry support and when they surround the enemy. So this is a good example of that. And this is, when the enemy is not supporting with his shock infantry. So basically, that's an example of, an impetuous charge. If someone gets too anxious and they just charge their cav straight in because they're like, oh, my units are stronger. Yeah, that's true. These Clibanarii are stronger than the Sarmatian Cataphracts. But if you blob up like that, you can get surrounded, and then the enemy can support with his infantry. And if you don't support with your infantry, you're definitely going to lose that engagement. So as you can see, I completely lost one whole Sarmatian Cataphract unit, and then this one is down to half. But they did get a good charge into the 2 Hetarea Guards. But I've won that engagement. I lost about a quarter of my lead Agathyrsi Warriors. So that's what you want to do, guys. If you that's the ideal cavalry scenario, one of them. Someone blobs up their cav, you're able to surround, or simply having more cavalry than the enemy. Maybe you engage head to head, 1 unit versus 1 unit, but what if you simply have more cavalry? You'll have a free unit to charge into his infantry and surround the enemy, move around, get charges in the rear. So now I'm going to show you guys what you can do to say bait a charge. So here I'm going to push out 1 slinger, kind of 1 Germanic hurler by itself, to to bait his charge. Now, once again, this is not a real battle. I'm telling my friend jwilly exactly what to do so that I can demonstrate some moves for you guys. However, all these things are real scenarios, and you can see them in my videos all the time. So here, I push out my slingers, and I have my general here. So he's gonna charge his cav out unsupported at my general. So he's gonna see my general and be like, oh look, my Clubinari, I can kill his Alani general, so I'm gonna go charge him. So this is baiting a charge. So I leave my general there long enough for him to want to take the bait, but then I pull away and charge with a different unit. Now, I do get blocked up by my own slinger unit, but I still get a pretty good charge in. And then same thing with the slingers. I use the slingers in loose formation so the charge is not as devastating. And then I come around and charge his Clubinarii in the back. And my slingers, they take a pretty big beating, but they're cheap and they're still alive. And they brunted the charge of these Clubinarii and guaranteed me to win this fight. So now he's going to try to rush up his infantry support, but by now it's too late. So his cav units already got charged. His guys are already losing the engagement. Oh yeah, and one more thing to note. Using your general abilities. This is why simply having a cavalry general is so much better in a lot of situations than having an infantry general, because when you bring brace, the general's ability brace on your general. So that's what happens. So I'll get back to that in a second, but see, his cav unit's dead, so now I have free cavalry to charge in his head of regulars and just do tons of damage. Now, his throwing axis did a lot of damage to my cav, but it's not going to make up for the damage the cav did to him on the charge. And now I'm bringing in infantry support. So this is what you want to do. If you're able to isolate the enemy cavalry, like I did, especially with pulling out, and here's another example. He has a charge order on my Sarmatian Cataphracts, and I'm charging him in the side with my elite Agathusi warriors. So his guys are not going to fight effectively when they don't have a charge order on the unit that's trying to fight them. Now I'm going to charge them in the rear with my general. So going back to having a cavalry general, if you have a cavalry general with brace, that allows you to win cav engagements much better. So brace, it gives you like bracing bonus and extra mass entity and a bunch of other stuff. But the biggest thing is that it gives all the units in an area, a pretty large area at range, all of your units and allies, 9 bonus first cavalry, an additional 9 bonus. So if they're spearmen, then they already have a bonus first cav, they'll have 9 more bonus. Swordsmen that don't have any bonus first cav will have 9 bonus first cav. So it's very crucial. And the reason why that's so important is because in Attila, cavalry is so powerful. It's very important to win the cavalry fights. If you win, that's why most people deploy their elite units and their heavy cav on the flanks. Because if you can win on the flanks with your cavalry, then you can smash the center. And whatever they have in the center is typically not going to be able to stand up to that. So cavalry in Attila is very, very powerful. Much more powerful than in Rome too, especially shock cavalry. That's why typically you'll see much more shock cav than melee cav. Except for Noble Alani cav and maybe Tagmata cav, but pretty much no one else, and Nordic horse swords. But for the most part, shock cav is way better than melee cav, one-on-one, fighting on the flanks. So that's why you want to win the cav engagements, is because cavalry is so important. So even a depleted, weak, and cheap cav unit can do insane damage to an expensive, full health infantry unit that infantry simply cannot do. So that's why cavalry is so important in Attila. And so it's very important to win the cav fight on the flanks. So if you have a cavalry general, that means he's mobile, 1. 2, he's more cavalry. And being mobile with that brace allows you to put brace wherever the cavalry fight is. If you have an infantry general and say the enemy ambushes you or just starts an engagement away from where your general is, then he's not going to be able to support your cav with brace. And say the enemy has a cavalry general, then he can support his cav with brace and just kill your cav, and then it's going to be really hard from that point to win the game. You can still win the game if you don't win the cavalry fight, but it's so much harder. You got to do a lot more work to win. So that's why having a cavalry general is very important, and also putting brace on that general is very important. Now, another thing to note, slingers. Slingers are a lot more favored over archers right now in this current patch, because slingers, they do their damage. Well, one, they're cheap. These cheap slingers, they're pretty cheap, so you can get a lot of them for, not a lot of money. And they're in loose formation, they take charges well, so they can get charged by, super heavy shot cav, and they won't just get annihilated, especially if they're running away. They'll lose a lot of people, but they won't just explode as if they're in a tight infantry formation. So loose formations, cheap slingers are great for absorbing enemy missile fire because they're cheap. Taking charges, so basically being meat shields for your mainline infantry or your cavalry. And also, what's good about slinger type units in Attila is that they slow. So whatever they shoot at is being slowed, including your own units. There's friendly fire in Attila, and pretty sure every Total War too. And what's so important about that is, once again, the cavalry. It affects the infantry as well, but not as much. Since the cavalry is so powerful and so important in Attila, if you can slow the enemy's cavalry, then you diminish their charge bonus. You can catch them easier with maybe some fast infantry, or, much slower cavalry, some heavy cav. You can catch some light cav with some heavy cav. And if the enemy has a huge charge bonus, you will diminish that, which most shot cav does. They have huge, over 200 charge bonuses, so that's big. That's why slingers are so good right now in Attila. That's why people tend to take them over simple bowmen, and they also deal their damage really fast. So in Attila, a lot of people use these type of semi-rush builds like I use, where you bring an army intending to rush. However, you bring some skirmishers, you bring a couple slingers to screen your army, to be meat shields, to damage the enemy cavalry, slow them down, diminishing their charge bonus, preventing them from running away, and on top of that, doing damage and getting kills. But honestly, that's not their primary job. For me, when I use slingers, I don't expect them to get a ton of kills. I don't need them to. I just need them to block charges and to screen my units, my shock infantry, from the enemy missiles and the enemy cavalry. That's basically their job for how I play and how a lot of other people play. They're not relying on the slingers to get tons of kills, like you are if you bring elite archers or crossbowmen. You really need those guys to get a lot of kills, or at least do a lot of damage. So those are some basic moves for you guys: baiting charges, surrounding the enemy units, supporting cav fights with infantry. You saw how much weaker cavalry can be much stronger cavalry if they're supported with infantry, and especially if you can surround the enemy and the enemy blobs. So that's another reason: never blob your units, never ever blob your guys unless you are surrounding the enemy. So how you saw in that first cav engagement on my left, the enemy came in, I stopped them with one unit, and then I went around the sides, charged into his axemen that were unsupported. So I got a free charge into the axemen, then I pulled out, and then charged back into the rear of the cavalry, completely surrounded them, and then I blobbed up even more with my infantry support, so that way I can kill them. That's the only time you ever really want to blob, is when you're surrounding an enemy blob. Being on the inside of the blob is much worse than being on the outside if you're surrounding them. So yeah, and also that would be a terrible target to get shot at. Like if you had all those cavalry blobbed up and I was shooting into that cavalry, I'd be able to get so much damage and get so many kills because all your units are so tight and close together. So there you go, guys. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope I showed you guys, if you didn't know, some basic moves, some basic strategies and tactics that you can use in your multiplayer battles.